We've covered a lot of ground in this lecture series, and let me just pause to remind you what we learned. First of all, we learned that qualitative research is like a light in the darkness, helping us to make sense of the world around us and defining the shapes and shadows off in the distance. And I want you to keep this analogy firmly in your mind for the rest of this course. Qualitative research is a wonderful tool for helping us to see clearly, even when our senses attempt to deceive us. We've also learned about 4 applications of qualitative research. These include exploration, the deep dive or drill down, idea generation, and qualitative testing. While these applications aren't the totality of what we use in qualitative research that we do, they're the 4 broad categories that encompass a lot of the work that's done. We've also redefined the research process with a qualitative perspective. Now, remember in particular that problem definition is the most important step, and we should always be willing to conduct a literature review to help shape that problem, particularly in very exploratory research. We should also be mindful of our sampling method. It's generally not efficient or useful to insist on a random sample, so we tend to use non-probability methods like purposive sampling and quota sampling instead. We've also discussed the role of the observer in research and learned about how the simple act of being observed changes the universe around us. We can't eliminate this effect, but we can certainly strive to understand it and limit our control for our influence as observers. And finally, we've discussed the why, what, and how of observational research and covered some of the best practices for it, as well as the dangers of interpretation from an ethnocentric point of view. Now, let me close this series by returning to the story I told about my nighttime walk through Charleston, South Carolina, where, as you may recall, my mind was racing to invent explanations for the unusual things I was seeing because I had not bothered to look at a map or read up on the area before going there. One of the reasons this particular experience remains so firmly embedded in my memory is because I had to give a talk the next day, and I used my observations from the night before as a way of explaining to the audience how a researcher often sees the world a little bit differently from others and often seeks explanations for observations that are not easily understood. I explained to them, as I have to you, that one of the reasons I utilize qualitative research in my work is because it's a light in the darkness, helping me to make sense of the shadows around me and to overcome the strange things that my imagination comes up with when I'm faced by something I don't understand. Being a good observer is a big part of being an excellent qualitative researcher, and I encourage you to keep your eyes open and to seek answers in life whenever you can. But I also encourage you to be the sort of person who strives to collect good data and to be mindful of how easy it is to invent fictional answers to real problems based on your own biases. As you hold up your own light to the darkness, remember that it's sometimes the light itself that creates the shadows before you, and shadows can be tricky things that distort reality. But the more light you can provide, the better a chance you have to chase those shadows away.